Good evening, everybody. Welcome. My name's David. I'm the festival manager. I'm really excited to see so many people with us today. This is the first time we've used the library space at the Cambridge Union, so it's lovely to see it full of people. I'm really thrilled to introduce Tim Minshall today. You know the title of the talk because you're here, but your life is manufactured. So I'm going to pass straight over to Tim and enjoy your evening. Tim.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Can you all hear me at the back? Someone at the back raise their thumb. Yeah, thank you. Slightly strange echo. Are you hearing this too? Yes. Could we have a word with Chris at the back? It's fixed. Thank you. It's fantastic. I just say Chris and magic happens. So I am Tim Minshall, and thank you very much for coming out on this beautiful evening. It's particularly cruel that you can see outside, and you can, for those sitting on this side, you can just peer outside at people sitting in the shade, having a nice drink, and your turn will come, okay? So what I thought I'd do is there's about 45 minutes of stuff here, including some videos, some things in this pink bag that are rather important I want to show you. And at the end, there'll be time for questions and anything you want to raise. I'd also say, if you want to interrupt me at any point, I'm very happy, I'm very used to being interrupted and very happy to be interrupted if you have a point you'd like to make. But I'd just like to get through a story with you, if that's okay. So maybe starting with one little question for you. So I have this, for those at the back, maybe you can see it on that other screen, but this bit of small text, some of you may be able to see, Dr. John C. Taylor, Professor of Innovation and Head of the Institute for Manufacturing. Extremely long job title, but I also have some wonderful colleagues with a great sense of humour. So when I got this job, I went into my office and they had a little sign on the door that had all of those words on it, and they'd also put a little graphic next to it, which had two axes, horizontal and vertical. Along the horizontal axis, it said length of job title, and on the vertical axis, it said grip on reality. And they drew a little curve, clearly indicating where they thought I was. So that was nice. A quick show of hands. How many of you have heard of Dr. John C. Taylor? Yes, well, you have to. Yes, so for those who don't know him, you will be using his technology every single day of your life. Yep, so he's the guy who invented the electric kettle switch. He's the man who successfully commercialized the electric kettle switch. I mean, very successfully, so that pretty much every single kettle in the world, or the vast majority of them, switch off with that little click because of his technology. Okay, and such has been the success of that, so at any one time, about 1 billion people will be using his technology, which is quite a thought, all around the world. And as a result of that, he was kind enough to make a benefaction to the university, which created this job that I got by mistaken identity, but also, for those who are from Cambridge locally, King's Parade, the Corpus Clock, that was designed and paid for by John C. Taylor as well. So he also flies his own aeroplane, and he's just a wonderful guy. So where was I going with that? Right, the purpose of this talk is very, very simple. Now, some of you will know this, and some of you, this may be kind of new to you, so I'm going to try and aim this roughly in the middle. But the entire talk is based on a very, very simple statement. And this statement is, everything that you can see now, unless it's a rock, a plant, another person, or some other animal, has been manufactured. So everything you can see now. So somebody had to think, I need this clock, not just this clock, this hand on this clock. Someone had to think that's going to be needed. They had to get the materials. They had to make it into a particular shape. They had to assemble those components to make a clock. They had to then get the clock shipped to where it's needed. And then we, as consumers, can look at this clock that apparently is showing it that it's now midnight. So maybe that's not the best example. Everything has been manufactured. And yet the whole process by which that happens, to most of us, is largely invisible. And you might quite reasonably say, well, that's so what? Who cares? But I think we should care. And we've had some recent examples where we really have been made aware that it doesn't work. And I'm afraid we're going to face more situations where we've seen what happens when it doesn't work. Jumping ahead, spoiler alert here, I'm going to be talking a little bit about the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, which was sadly a tragic illustration of what happens if we don't pay attention to manufacturing and understand how it works so that we can actually be more resilient to shocks like a pandemic or like some other incident where we suddenly need to be able to make things. Another issue, that again I'm giving you the whole story in advance in case you wish to drift off and go and have a drink, is such an important message. The way we manufacture things is absolutely brilliant, but it's actually very harmful to the planet. So we have to do it better. But the irony is, the way in which we're going to make this planet better is by having more manufactured goods of a particular type. So that's the whole story in 2 minutes. For those who now wish to stay, I'm going to give you a few more words here. Right, so I thought we'd start off with a very, very simple product. I'm going to talk a little bit about that, and then we're going to go through just 7 words that describe, I reckon, everything you need to know about manufacturing so that you can leave this room and become evangelists for manufacturing to others who couldn't be here this evening. You may also choose to purchase the book, but that's Gesundheit. Purchase the book with the same title, but that's entirely optional, of course. So there is something sitting on your seat when you sat down. You might have been a bit alarmed, going, why am I coming to a talk where part of the preparation is to have a sheet of toilet paper placed on the seat? If you have it, can you just put it in your hands now? Get it wherever it was? Because I want to talk about this super simple manufactured product. You just go, well, this doesn't sound very exciting, but, that's how we normally see it, as a roll. But if you look at this, you'll see it's actually quite a complicated product. If you have fingernails, just try and tease it apart slightly, because you'll see it's more than one sheet. And so that's what's called a ply, and typically there's usually a minimum of 2, sometimes 3, sometimes 4. If you're very posh, 5 ply. I've never seen such a thing, but apparently it exists. But what's particularly interesting is if you do pull it apart, you'll see that the texture is different at different sides of it. You'll see it's also been cut to a very specific shape. You'll see it at 2 edges. It's been serrated, and so little wispy bits have come off that were made at exactly the right dimension so you could pull it apart without tearing it or without having to pull too hard. But the key bit I want you to focus on is the textures. And part of the reason it has these different textures is it's actually made from wood pulp from different types of tree. Bear with me. So the different types of tree are chosen for a very particular reason. Trees that are grown in colder climates tend to produce fibres that are very good for strength, and trees that are grown in warmer climates tend to produce fibres that are slightly softer. So what you want, without getting too graphic, is toilet paper that is soft and strong, okay? And that's a thing. And so you go, well, why is that interesting? Well, think about it. So we're not in a hot climate, or not that cold a climate either. So a lot of the trees we need to make something like this will come from Scandinavia or from South America. So actually shipping chopped down trees, or the chippings or the pulp of chopped down trees from opposite sides of the hemisphere, and doing a whole load of things to bring them to where we need to use them. And so I realized I didn't even know how this simple product is made. So I went to find out. And the first bit is, I knew it involved a tree somewhere, and I knew it involved a rolling mill somewhere. I was going to show you a video, and I thought trees were chopped down by people with axes or possibly chainsaws, and it was all very, Monty Python lumberjack stuff. Not at all. If you can see this, here is a tree harvesting machine. So it looks a bit like a fancy tractor. That's what it's going to do. It's going to grab the base of the tree. At the base, it's going to grab it. It has a chainsaw inside it, which goes zoomp, and then it just chops it, and you go, well, not very interesting. But look what it does now. It's had programmed in the right length. It says, well, that's going to make timber for timber frame houses. Chop that bit off. Get rid of the little branches. More timber for timber frames. Getting a bit smaller now, probably for pallets, maybe something else. Chop those bits off. Chopped it down there. Move it over there a bit. Chop that. Last little bit, probably go to wood pulp, wood chips. That's it. Right, so all of that just to get a tree down. Those machines cost hundreds of thousands of pounds. Those trees took a minimum of 40 years to grow, probably slightly longer. And, okay, so now we've got the fact that we know that there are trees involved and something happens to make them into loo roll. Right, so again, I started just digging into this. Go, well, those bits of tree have to be taken to some sort of sawmill, and they're then cut into different lengths for different purposes, some of which are made into wood chip. That wood chip can be used for It could be chucked down in gardens, playgrounds, all sorts of other uses. It could be very, very finely chipped to make it into chipboard. And so it's then shipped off. Some of it is shipped to a pulp mill, where they then apply lots of mechanical smashing up and heat and chemicals to make it into pulp fibre, which they then extract the water from, dry it, put it on a ship, bring it all the way somewhere, which then gets put on a truck, which is then taken to a rolling mill. Now I'm going to show you very briefly a rolling mill. This isn't a toilet paper rolling mill. This is actually a newspaper rolling mill, which is up the road in King's Lynn from here. I'm just going to show you 3 videos of what it looks like. So here, that's what it looks like when they put the water back in again. So they've got sheets of dried pulp they've taken the water out of, then put the water back in again, mush it all up. This machine I'm going to show you in a second is all of this. You'll see me the camera pan all the way, and it goes all the way over here somewhere. That is one machine. It is one giant rolling mill. Okay, and out the other end comes these enormous rolls of paper, which if it were toilet paper would be multiply and would be then sliced up into smaller rolls. It gets a bit noisy this, so bear with me. So you have gloopy pulp, giant rolling mill, out the other end, big rolls of paper. Just to do that one again. All of this, one giant machine. One incredibly big machine. That's just got you to now having a roll. That would then be chopped up into smaller units, transported, possibly by Eddie Stobart, possibly by someone else, put into a giant distribution centre, because of course you don't want to send it to every single shop from the paper mill. You'd send it to a fulfillment centre or a consolidation centre or a warehouse. And that would then be sent off, nice Andrex truck here, to finally end up on a supermarket shelf. All of that to make something that you've just seen in your hand is actually mechanically and design a complex mechanical design of a product. And that seems quite complicated for something as simple as a sheet of paper, which has, a limited usability. So what I want to do in the rest of this talk is say, well, if that's how complicated something as simple as a sheet of toilet paper is, how does everything else get made? And I hope you can all begin to see now that it's suddenly, looking around this room, every single one of the products here, every item of clothing you're wearing, your glasses, your cup of coffee, anything has been manufactured and will have gone through a journey at least as complicated as that, probably more complicated. But to make it digestible, I'm just going to give you 6 words and then one other one. And the first one is about this process that we go through. There's basically 3 elements to any manufacturing thing. You make stuff, you move stuff, and then we consume it. And there's a few other words we'll come to in a second. But the basic one has to be, how do you make stuff? Well, I love baking. And so when I wanted to kind of work out how different factories work, I thought I'd base it on the idea of making cake. So I'm going to explain now the basic 4 types of factory. Every factory in the world pretty much fits into one of these categories. You have one of these, so that is a factory. It is what we'd call a job shop. It's got some standard tools, and if I've got half my wits about me, either from a cookbook or from Instagram, I can probably, if I had the skills, make almost any recipe. So I can make that cake, that cake, that cake. I didn't make that cake, that was my daughter. But I can make anything, but I can't make very many of them. So I can make almost anything, high variety, but very, very low volume. So a job shop like that is very standard. The next one is, well, I thought, what if you want to make, 20 cakes or 30 cakes? How would that be done? And so I met the wonderful Alison Wright from Fitzbillies here in Cambridge, and she was kind enough to let me go on a shift with the bakers. I didn't realise I had to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning to get to Fitzbillies. But there is Sam and Tony, and they're making, what are these? Chelsea buns. So this is how they're made. You have a giant roll, and you have the mysterious secret recipe brown paste, and that's then smeared on there, and you then put the currants in, and then you roll it up, and you end up with something that looks like this. Then you hand it over to the highly experienced Jean, who then has to make 40 exactly the same size Chelsea buns. And I love this video, because without any measuring, he's so good at making lots of these, he doesn't need to measure stuff out. Watch this. So could you please count how many chops he makes, okay? So you'll see him in a minute. When I click this button, he'll start chopping it up. Count how many times you hear a click of the knife. Ready? Go. How many? 41. Any change, advance on 41? 42, 43. Well, I'll call it 40. So the point is, he chops the ends off. I'm not sure that counts. But he is producing exactly 40 Chelsea buns. Why does he make 40? Because that's the size of a Chelsea bun tray. If you look through the window in Fitzbilly's, they have 40 in them. Now you know. But incredible. So he can make, Tony, Sam, Jean, and all the rest of the team can make batches because they're very good at making a few hundred of those, sometimes a few thousand of those in batches. But what if you want to make lots more? So if they're making a few hundred or a few thousand, what if you want to make hundreds of thousands a day? You need something a bit different. You could just employ lots of Sams, lots of Tonys, lots of Jeans, and take it from there. Kind of tricky. So what you instead do, if you want to make these, which they are making in units of hundreds of thousands each day, you need to automate. You need to have everything standardized, no variation, just make this. And if you're doing the same thing over and over again, machines are often better than people, if there aren't enough people, or it's fairly repetitive work. So you have these amazing machines that just go zoom and produce wonderful cherry bakewells from Mr. Kipling. Other brands exist. But I do like the fact that sometimes robots can't do everything you want. And so there's one task, the last time I checked, that the robots couldn't do when they're making cherry bakewells. I love the fact that they still have people putting the cherries, the quarter cherries on top. Because yes, you could get a robot to do that. It's just a bit fiddly, and why would you bother? So if you like these and you buy them and you look at it, you'll see sometimes they're not always positioned perfectly in the center because it's had a human do that. A human put the cherry on top. The machines aren't quite ready to take over yet. So 3 types of factory. Job shop, batch production. Well, this is very, very high volume batch production. But there's another type of factory still linked to baking. And this is making things like this. Sugar, where basically you've got one product being made. Now, I know a very intelligent audience like this in Cambridge will go, no. It's actually billions of products because each grain of sugar is technically a product. We're not doing that, okay? We'll assume it's just sugar. And that is produced in something like this. In the case of the UK, a majority of our sugar is made from sugar beet. And that comes in, and this is up the road from here. This is in Wissington, near Feltwell. Trucks come in, and they go through this incredible machine which washes them, chops them, shreds them, pulps them, does all this wonderful crystallization process, and then fills up these silos with thousands of tons of sugar. But it is one process, from one end to the other, one product being produced. So that's called continuous manufacturing. So we've got job shop, batch, mass production, continuous. It's starting to sound like a bit like an undergraduate lecture, for which I apologize. But I just wanted you to have this. This is the basics of manufacturing. So every time you see something, you can probably think, well, they only made one of those, so that was probably made in a job shop. Oh, I'm buying a cake from a local bakery. That's been made in a batch. Go down the road to Sainsbury's, as I just did to buy a snack. That will have been made in a factory like the Mr. Kipling one. And anything like mayonnaise or sugar or anything like that will have been made in a continuous flow process. Right, so it is also true that each one of those 4 types of factories, I'm not just talking about food, they mirror into the non-baked goods world as well. So that is a standard workshop, a bit hard to see, I know, but that's just a workshop with some tools in it. You can make anything, like a village blacksmith used to be, or any kind of small metalworking shop does that. A Formula One team is basically doing batch production. How many cars do each team produce each year? Anybody know? 40. Each team. Any idea? 2. Each team is only making 2 cars. So it's a batch of 2. So they have a very specialized factory to just make 2 things. And it has to be done exactly right to very, very precise specifications. Whereas your standard car is mass production. So this is the Zeekr plant in China, a brand new factory producing hundreds of thousands of cars each year. And the equivalent of the sugar production plant in the non-baked goods world, well, we've seen it already. It would be the paper mill. But it could also be the cement factory, it could be a glass production or steel production. So those are the basics of how we make stuff. So you've got 4 little ideas hopefully in your head there. Next of the top 3 words is moving. It is staggering how much stuff we move around. It is just absolutely crazy sometimes when you think about how much moving takes place to get us all the things we want. And to give this a sense of scale, I wanted to learn about this a bit more. So I went to one of my colleagues, Mukesh Kumar, and I said, can you give me an example of a product that has what you might call so the moving of things around from one factory to another to distribution to a shop is called a supply chain. I said, can you give me an example of a simple product that has a supply chain that's quite interesting? And he showed me this. And I went, okay, Mukesh, I think you might have misunderstood the question. And he went, no, even a lettuce has a complex supply chain. So I used to think it went from that to that, and there was not much going on between those 2 points. I was wrong. So a little hard to see for those at the back, but I'll just point to the key bits. Behind the simple field to fork is a supply chain of reasonable complexity. So you've got the farms here, you've got those who will do all the washing and the cooling to keep it fresh and bagging it up. Then it goes to some sort of massive consolidation centre, a giant warehouse. But then it doesn't just go to you and to you and to you. It gets sent to different markets. It might be sent to you directly. More likely it's going to be sent to a supermarket, but it might be sent to someone who makes salads that are sold in supermarkets. Or it might go to a restaurant or to a wholesaler to sell it to a restaurant. So suddenly, even something that has basically 2 components, a leaf and a bag, has got a complex supply chain. So that's getting a bit weird. So then you say, what if the product isn't a lettuce? What if the product is something with a few more components? Like that. So that's a Mark II Volkswagen Golf, I believe. Anybody care to guess how many components are in a typical petrol or diesel-powered car? Any ideas? Yeah. 10,000. Well, not a bad guess. Higher. It's like that game show we used to do. 40,000? 14, 1-4. Higher. 15. 50. Overshot the mark. But on average, you got the right answer. It's 30,000. So one car contains 30,000 components, each one of which, not every single one, but many of them made in different factories. We've got the tyres, the wheels, the springs, the valves, the brakes, the brake calipers. Every little bit could be made in a different place with a different supply chain, all of which has to come together. That's quite complicated. And you may say, wow, the world's got simpler with electric cars. Yes, electric cars are simpler. They only have 15,000 components. But then you go to something like this, and the numbers go up and up again. I won't ask you to guess, but it's 6 million, all right? It's an extraordinary number. Now, that's quite an old aeroplane with lots of rivets, lots of aluminium, and lots of complexity. Modern aircraft, a little bit simpler with more composite materials, but it's still about 4 million, 3 to 4 million components. And you go, wow, that's a lot of bits, and often they're made in different places. And it just blew my mind to think, it's not just moving rivets. It's not like Amazon, they're sending you a little bag of screws or nuts or bolts. They're actually making different bits of the aircraft in different cities, sometimes in different countries, sometimes in different continents. And so just a very short video, the start of this video. This is about building an aircraft, the biggest aircraft, the A380. But these bits have been made in different factories and are being brought together. So their supply chain is moving massive things. These are, well, I don't need to say it, they're huge. So huge, they need to go on ships. There's a lovely bit in a moment where you'll see something extraordinary. There we go. So these are bits coming off the ship, but they've arrived at the harbour. They've got to get to the assembly plant in Toulouse, in this case. So they shove it onto a boat. Have to wait until the tide's gone down a bit to get it under the bridge. But I love some of these scenes coming up in a minute, where you'll see the fact that the components are, look at that. They have to shut the roads to move these things around. Now, I know you want to watch the rest of that. On my website, there's a link to that, because it's just amazing to watch. The entire building of an aircraft sped up in 7 minutes. Well worth a look. But each one of the companies providing the rivets and the bolts and the paint and the fins and all of the bits that are then assembled into these massive big components form a network that looks like this, or maybe like this. And these look very pretty, and this is from my colleague Alexandra Brintrup, but these are much more than pretty pictures. She has mapped all of the companies involved in making a single car or a single aircraft. And the thing is, you can maybe see just the sort of dots, and it looks like one of those magic eye things. Don't look for the pattern, there isn't one there. But each one of those dots is maybe a few hundred, a few thousand people. Each one of those lines is the moving of something. And this gets all a little bit digital and a bit abstract, and you go, oh, yes, 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 supply networks, that sounds important. But what it means is stuff being moved around, stuff being moved very often on shipping containers. And I just love showing these time-lapse videos of Felixstowe or London Gateway or Singapore or wherever. These containers are containing components of aircraft, of cars, of electronics, may contain complete iPhones, goodness knows what's in those boxes. But this whole system is operating 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. All of this is happening to move all those bits around to allow all of these dots to be connected and to allow us to be connected to the output of those dots. And so it gets extraordinary how big it all is. So I wanted to see what it looked like. So I was very lucky, and I got to go to Felixstowe Docks and got to climb up one of the big cranes. They did switch it off before they let me sit in the control seat and said, you can touch what you like. We've cut the power off. I went, oh. Anyway, that's what it looks like. That's 150,000 containers. And Felixstowe is quite a small container port. I don't think it ranks in the top 30 in the world. Okay, so so for those who own cars, please.
30 years ago, I was doing some work at Felixstowe Docks. I went there, and before I went, they said, you will not see any paper in the offices.
Oh, wow.
And the only papers I saw were the newspapers. And they
Wow.
were showing me how they track, and they were a lot smaller then,
Yep.
but they were showing me how they track the containers online, and this was 30 years ago.
That's amazing, isn't
They
it?
sold it to some Petersburg.
Ah, yes. Wow. Thank you for that. No, not at all. See, direct link to Felixstowe Docks right here with us. But what blows my mind is that fact that they don't use any paper. The other bit is, if you've ever parked your car in a multi-storey car park, gone shopping and come back, went, where was it again? 150,000 containers, every single one, they have to know where it's come from, where it's going to, who owns it, what's in it, when it's going to be picked up, and by whom. All of that, all the time. And some of these are temperature controlled. They contain goods that are going to perish if they're not picked up at the right time. All of this going on as one tiny bit of the manufacturing world. And so when it gets from these containers, of course, that's not much good. That's not going to help you in your factory or your shop. It then goes to some sort of distribution center. And again, just to get that sense of perspective, that's one of the Amazon ones. It goes so far back. Every one of these little colored dots you can maybe see at the back here is a bucket with some products in. Millions of products offloaded from containers, which then need to be put in the right place to get to the right customer. So this is the Ocado warehouse. Okay, it doesn't look like a warehouse, but underneath is all the goods, all the rolls of toilet paper and cans of Coke and mayonnaise and bags of sugar from Wissington. These are the people who are packing for customers, and the robots go along the top and reach down and pick things up. So you'll see, completely autonomously, they just go, this customer needs these products, and the robots just scootle off, find it, they get to the right column, and they'll reach down, grab it, and lift it up, and scootle it over to where it's needed there. All completely, largely autonomously. So all of this is happening in the background, while we're sleeping, while we're awake. Very few of us get to see it. Third and final bit of this first half. We get involved as consumers. There's this funny sentence that people sometimes use. There is our lives, and then there is industry. This thing that we're not part of, that we don't really like because it's polluting and the factories don't look very nice and it's just terrible. I would perhaps urge the phrase absolute nonsense. We are part of it because things are made because we need things. We want things. We are made to want things, for sure. But we've also got quite fussy. And I'm going to illustrate this, because we're getting towards Easter, a little way off yet, with the chocolate bunny. So when I was young, which is a long time ago, I remember there was the Lindt chocolate bunny, and there was one of them. I don't mean only one in the world. I meant there's only one flavour. It was the milk chocolate one. And now the world has moved on. We want dark chocolate, and we want milk chocolate, and we want hazelnut. We want everything. And that's maybe just go, wow, 4 products, not very much. But then I used to live in Japan. For anyone who may have visited there as well, there's like 50 variations of Kit Kat. A Kit Kat is a Kit Kat. Sorry, I must calm down. All right, dairy milk. Just if some of you in the audience will remember when there was a thing called dairy milk and it was 1 bar of chocolate, it was 1 size and it had 1 flavour. Now we want this huge variety of things. And this presents some quite interesting challenges for manufacturing, because if we want things made in huge variety, well, you remember my little kitchen, that's the best place to make a lot of different goods so that every one of us could have a different chocolate bar. But I would struggle to provide even enough chocolate for everyone in this room. What we really need is a factory that can make lots and lots of things. If you actually want both of these things together, you want the ability to make lots of different things. And the weird thing is, because of our insatiable demand for a variety of products, the engineers have come up with a solution. And that solution is, or one of the solutions, is to come up with new technologies that are much more customizable. They can make lots of different products very easily. And for those who haven't seen this, this is 3D printing. So there is a very basic 3D printer, which is producing a little robot. This is a desktop printer, and it's made me a tiny little robot toy. You might go, well, why do we need a tiny robot toy? The point is, it can make anything that's not constrained. Anything that the software tells it to make, it will make. And it can make quite big things. So I'm now going to show you the building, not of a plastic toy, but of something quite big. And people go, yes, but these machines don't build to a very high quality. This is a rocket booster. They have to be built to the highest standards of quality. So a bit of loud music coming up, but you'll see a rocket booster being built by a 3D printer. And this is the size of it. That is sped up, I should point out. So that's a very particular type of 3D printing, and you're going, yes, it can only make a cylindrical thing. How many cylindrical things do we need? Fair point. So how about making a car with a 3D printer? So this is not a toy car, it's not a little miniature one. This is a full-size, functioning car that was 3D printed. The clever thing about this is, what car manufacturers want is to make simple models of car that you buy. And they'll change the colour of it and maybe change the engine. With this, every one of us can have a different car. It did take 44 hours to print it, and then 4 days to actually make it into a usable car, so it's not quick. But the clever bit is you could make any shaped car in that machine, rather than a standardized car made from standardized equipment. Now, there's a long way to go before we get that, and I'm not sure we ever will get this. But it's making this point. You can have more variety in high volumes by having lots of those machines working. So, change. Everything I've talked about implies that we're going to make things and make them better, cheaper, faster. I now want to show you how the world changes, and I'm going to need a volunteer from the audience. Oh, thank you very much. Would you mind standing here? Could you stand here, facing that way? Okay, nothing bad's going to happen. All I want to do is just hand you a mobile phone, okay? Very simple. It's that. There we go. Could you just hold that, please? It's a little bit heavy, right? You got that? Don't drop it on your toes, whatever you do. Right, so this is a mobile phone from an era. I'll take you off it. Thank you very much. Do you want to see a slightly smaller one? That'd be easier. Okay, I'll get you a much smaller one. Stay there. Right. By the way, does anybody remember using one of these? Yeah. Could you put your hand up? I'm not going to judge. Oh, I'm amongst friends. Good. In fact, no. Come on. Let's do it properly. Health. I haven't done a risk assessment. Right. I'll pass it. It is very heavy. Okay. So don't drop it on your toes. Right. So manufacturing engineers said, wow, we can make a mobile phone. We built a factory to make a giant mobile phone. We could at that point have said, stop, that's big enough and good enough, but engineers, in particular manufacturing engineers, love making things smaller. So they said, I reckon we can make that a bit smaller. Ready? So it's much smaller, really tiny, really, really tiny, that big. Okay? Anybody recognize this one? Use this one? Yes, fine. Okay, very good. We'll pass this round this way. Right, and then they went, well, we can improve it even more. This one. Right, so this you like. Can you pull the aerial up? Grab that. That's very good. And then if you want to talk, that's it. The lovely thing is, when you finish talking on this, just give that a close, give it a good whack. Ah, so satisfying. You didn't press a little red dot on a glass screen, you snapped it shut. Now, in fact, do you want to just grab your seat there and keep that one for this evening? I'll need it back, though. Okay, thank you. Round of applause, please, for my helper here. Now, the last one I want to show you is the phone, okay? And I'm going to get a phone out of here, and I want you to tell me put your hand up if you ever owned a phone that looked like this. Okay, 3, 2, wait for that handover to take place. Successful. 3, 2, 1, go. Yeah, see? Everyone smiles when they remember this. Life was simpler. Follow-up question, what was the game you played on it? You have a look at that one, then pass it behind you, please. So the point I'm trying to make here is this is what manufacturing is all about. It's about making things better, not just cheaper, not just faster, sometimes smaller, but the difference between, if I may, who's got the giant one? Where is it? Oh, it's getting around. Yeah, don't drop it. But it's not that this was just a smaller version of that. The functionality of this was way above that. And you think about how we've gone from this to this. It's not that it got smaller and looks more elegant and has better adverts. This is absolutely staggeringly higher performance thing. Engineers, particularly manufacturing engineers, are obsessed by this idea of improvement, improvement, improvement. I don't know, for old time's sake. Right, so this business of changing is really, really important. But sometimes things don't change fast enough. So we've gone from this world where petrol engine invented, and then we've improved to get to the modern petrol car, and we had to kind of invent the ideal of oil extraction, we had to invent the petrochemical industry, we had to then deal with the pollution that comes out from this. But we're now seeing a massive transformation, we're seeing a huge change in what's going on. So we see the arrival of electric vehicles, but to do that, you can't just make an electric vehicle, you have to build billions of batteries in wonderful factories like this, that are huge, absolutely incredibly massive factories to make electric cars work. And of course, you want to make sure that you've got the charging infrastructure and you're absolutely sure you're actually sourcing your energy from renewable sources. So change isn't just about making the phone a bit smaller. Change isn't about making the cake a little bit sweeter or less sweet or healthier. Change is sometimes about changing the whole infrastructure of what we do. And so getting there, when you can see, you maybe hear the glasses clinking outside. We're heading towards the end now. The last couple of words here are about connecting. So there's this extraordinary thing that's happened, if I may judge people's age in this room. We have moved, through the generations in this room, to a very, very connected world that perhaps wasn't as connected in the past and definitely now is. And what we've managed to do is to say there is a whole physical world and there's a whole incredible digital world as well. And we've done clever things to connect these. And by connecting them, we've got an incredible ability, unfortunately, or fortunately, to buy stuff easier. Some of you may be shopping now, for all I know. It's absolutely straight. But a few years ago, that would be incredible. On your telephone, in fact, may I just borrow this for a second, please? Just very briefly. So when we had these, we didn't think, I could do my shopping on this. I mean, you could telephone someone and say, please deliver me something. But the idea that this would become a device for accessing a thing called the internet that would allow, food to be delivered to my door. Some of you, again, you could order food that would be delivered here before this talk is finished. That's pretty incredible, right? So, I love this. Oh, yes. But it's come with a few problems. So by connecting everything together, we've allowed ourselves to be much, much better at buying more stuff more efficiently, more quickly. We've also kind of, exploded the amount of stuff available. And that is a bit of a problem. But I'm going to end on a positive-ish note. The fact that we no longer separate out us from the world of making and moving. We're in a highly, highly kind of merged environment now. And the example I want to give is, in some ways, a very sad one, but actually it's immensely uplifting. We have not yet cured cancer. Statement of the obvious, I know, and huge efforts are being made to try and ensure we can treat cancer more effectively. But I'm not a specialist in this, but I am absolutely fascinated by the way in which certain treatments for cancer, particularly blood cancers, can be done in an incredibly novel manufacturing way. And what it's illustrating is, rather than saying, we assume you are all the same, and we will make drugs, pharmaceutical products that are suited to all of you. The truth is, awful lot of drugs have very little effect on many people because we're all different. Wouldn't it be much better if we could manufacture individual drugs for every single one of us, for our particular physiology, our particular history, our particular, I believe are called comorbidities, other things we have? That's great, we can now do that thanks to our genomic data we can access. But the problem is, how do you manufacture? Pharmaceutical manufacturing is largely about huge batches of identical drugs made for millions of people. What happens when you want to make millions of individual drugs for individual people, or millions of individual treatments? But it is happening. It's starting now. And this story on the BBC News is an illustration of this, happening just down the road at Addenbrooke's. The idea that you take cells from someone who has been diagnosed with cancer, certain types of cancer, extract them, do some production manufacturing on those cells to reprogram them, inject them back into the patient so they go after the cells themselves, the patient's cells, are then targeting the cancer to treat it. It's a brilliant idea, but it requires rather a complex set of activities to do that. But this is what we're moving towards. Personalized manufacturing. It's manufacturing a product for an individual person. And this is the extreme, because there is only one patient with those cells. That's where we're heading. Right, so now what have we got? We've got make, move, consume. We've got change, we've got connect, we've got merge. There's one final word that brings it all together, which is this whole talk and everything that we're focused on at our Institute for Manufacturing is trying to make sure we don't inadvertently destroy the planet, which would be very unfortunate. So there is a big, big problem with how we manufacture things at the moment. The systems we've built, that example I gave you of toilet paper, the example of the 6 million components for the aircraft, the example of everything I've talked about, is actually very, very fragile. It's brilliant how it works, and we get everything we want pretty much at 24 hours notice, at most. It's very fragile. And so, at the moment, a lot of goods that are bought in the UK, about a third of the manufactured goods, will come from mainland China. And that's quite a long journey to get there and get back again, but it's what it is. Some of you might remember this news story from a few years ago. Yes? So a 200,000-ton ship with 20,000 containers on it got stuck in the Suez Canal. So about 10% of global trade goes through that little bit of waterway there. So one person, so we've got this brilliant system that makes billions of products, that ships it to billions of customers, and yet one person on one ship making one slightly wrong decision on a tiny little lever managed to cause 10% of global trade to stop dead in the water, literally. That's not a good system. If it's that fragile, that can't be good. The other little problem with all this is the way we're doing it is very damaging. So not only is it very clever, it's very fragile, it's also quite damaging to the planet. And so, just to give you a quick example, it might be a little hard to see this, so I'll just highlight the main points. If you look at the CO2 emissions from moving stuff around, big chunk of it is road transport, so passenger transport. Next biggest one is road freight, trucks very polluting. Next biggest one is aviation, next is shipping. That produces, so if we're moving stuff around, we're doing it in a very polluting way. But the good news is, I'm nothing but an optimist, we have electric cars to deal with this. We're moving towards electric trucks to deal with this. We're moving to hybrid and sustainable aviation fuel to reduce the emissions from aviation. And we are moving towards zero-emission ships as well. So we're moving in the right direction. Good things are happening. But, so we can tick that one and say, good news, we're going to keep moving stuff, let's do it a bit cleaner. The last bit to mention, though, is, wouldn't it be great if we didn't have to move stuff around quite so much? And we all have an example in our lives, our recent memories of where we did do this. So if that's a typical supply chain between us and China, about 10,000 kilometers, it's nothing compared to, so I love this, the number of miles traveled by the components in this phone before it reached me was 250,000. Okay, that's 6 times around the world equivalent before it got to me. And that's a low estimate. Some estimates are that it's about 500,000 kilometers of moving of components backwards and forwards to deal with all sorts of things. That might change with Mr. Trump and tariffs, but anyway, that's where we are at the moment. But what if we could make that smaller? If we didn't do 10,000 kilometers, we did 1 kilometer. And COVID showed us exactly how that could be done. It was amazing how we realized that we could manufacture a lot of things locally. A lot of PPE, personal protective equipment, was made locally by companies like Barber. The Make Space here in Cambridge made a load of good stuff. We even started building ventilators, highly specialized bits of equipment that we usually buy from overseas, which we couldn't. We started making them here. So local manufacturing can be a great way of dealing with a shock to the system. And this picture here is actually one of the Formula One teams. McLaren got involved in helping with this particular product. So, 2 questions. Are there cleaner ways of moving things? Yes. Can we reduce the distance we move things? Yes. So to end, I'm just going to leave you with one little thought, and then I'm very happy to open up for questions. Starting with this making bit. I'd like you all to walk away from here, hopefully with it, if you didn't know it already, and I know some of you know a lot of this already, the idea of how we make things is really, really important. But I reckon we need to think quite a bit harder about what we're actually making. And people like those who are interested in the whole world of finding a way to make products that we really need rather than we constantly desire and throw away. I'm not going to get involved in anything to do with ideology to do with fast fashion because it's a very complicated story. But thinking a little bit about why am I buying that thing? Is it the thing that I really need now? There's also the how of making. How has it been made? Has it been made in a way that is very harmful or actually, and maybe traveling thousands of miles, or has it been made locally? Just thinking a little bit about that. I'm not being preachy and saying we must do this, but maybe a little bit of thought on this could be helpful. And then this moving bit in particular, we are seeing cleaner ways of moving stuff around, and that's great. And we're definitely seeing examples where things are moving closer. Again, one talk, now going to mention Donald Trump for the 2nd time, wasn't intending to do this, but what he is advocating for and what it will lead to will probably lead to things maybe moving a little bit less now. Gosh, this puts me in an awkward position. I'm just going to move on now. Consuming us lot, all right? I mean, it is fantastic. I am a terrible person, happily sitting there watching something on Netflix or whatever, or something advertised, and I go, oh, that looks good, I'll have one of those. Click, buy it. And I expect it to be at my front door the next day. Do I really need that? But it's so easy. All the friction has been taken away. And that means I sometimes buy things which I then return. And I go, if I just thought about it first, it's too easy. It's brilliant, but it's too easy. And then the last thing, the last click of this thing here is all the R's. All of the words that begin with re, that we really need to focus on. What words am I talking about? Recycling, reduce, reuse, repair, refuse. Yes, yeah, absolutely. There's also quite an important sequence to some of those words. Sometimes we think that recycling is the answer, and if I put it in the recycling bin, that's great. But actually the reuse, the repurpose is really good. The repair, absolutely fantastic if we can do that. And yes, recycling when everything else has been squeezed out of it. I also like the refuse. Do I really need that? The rethink. Is there another way of solving this problem without buying another thing? So yes, I don't want to end on a preachy note because you know this already. We all know this. And what I hope I've done in this talk is just give you a bit of a flavour of what's going on in the background that means that we probably should do more of this. So my time is up. I just want to say thank you very much for joining me this evening on this lovely sunny late day. And I'm very happy to take any questions. But first of all, thank you very, very much. I have my phone back. Right, yes, any questions or comments people might have? Please.
Yeah, that's all right.
It's for the recording, I think.
It's just a small point, and the fact is that when I grew up, and I'm old, so I can't help
I'm old
that,
too.
I was always taught the first thing when something broke was that you carefully took it apart, laid all the components out, tried to discover what the problem was, bought the component if you could get it, and put it together. But I don't see that so much now. And as we have such a low intake of engineers and designers at the moment, we need vastly more, then we are shooting ourselves in the foot, in that one respect anyway.
I think this is very, and I don't know if others have a similar view on this, but the idea that perhaps when some of us were younger, we, taught to try and repair things before buying another one. But now, don't you find some of the problem is the thing is unrepairable? Or, no, everything is repairable. It's very difficult to repair it. Certainly more tools. So I have a lovely example of this. I have a colleague who shall I refer to as John, because it's a bit embarrassing. Actually, his name is John, but that's not the point. And I did buy a new phone, but I wasn't going to buy one. I had an iPhone 7, which is really old, and the battery was getting worse and worse and worse. I couldn't even get to London, so I'd buy a ticket, scan it in at Cambridge Station, get to King's Cross, and I'd have a flat battery going, oh, this is difficult. So I said, nope, I'm going to put a new battery in. So I went to the Apple store. Other phone companies do a great job too. And they gave me a price for a new battery, and I went, cool, that's a lot of money. No. So I went online, and I bought a kit, and I went, right, that's going to be great. And I looked at it, and I watched the videos, of people making hideous mistakes with it. And then I bumped into my colleague, John, who said, yeah, I tried that. I go, did it work? And he goes, well, it was, in theory, a much cheaper way of doing it. I said, well, what happened? He goes, well, I was nudging the battery out like this, and he hadn't, you have to heat it up to get the glue to melt and all this stuff. He hadn't heated up quite enough, and so the battery bent slightly. If you bend, yes, the pained expression there, bend a lithium-ion battery, he went, oh, a lot of smoke coming out of this. I should get this out of the house quickly. So he started to walk towards the door and then went, no, I should let go of this now and run away. Dropped it. So it ended up destroying his carpet. And of course, it wasn't just a carpet that was there, it went up the stairs as well. So he had to pay for his entire front room to be recarpeted and the stairs. So as an economy move, probably not the best. But the serious point was, he's a smart engineer. He's got like 40 years of experience in industry. He struggled to do that. And this is the problem. And you need very specialist tools and blah, 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 all those things. But in principle, absolutely yes. Thank you. Any other, please? Oh, yes.
I think you were getting to it already when you were answering the question there, but it was just the element of cost involved as well in terms of reducing that footprint and making things in a more kind of local context.
Yes.
I was just reflecting on a podcast episode I listened to recently about this guy in the States in Arkansas trying to build a barbecue scrubber. And not only did he want to assemble it in the States, but he wanted all the parts to be made locally within Arkansas as well, and found out quickly that the machines weren't there, the skill and the labor wasn't there, and it took a lot of money to make this one scrubber, which then passed on to the consumer as well. I was just wondering if you could comment on that element as well, and whether or not we'll see a period where we will have to pay more and wait longer for things to be made while those skills and manufacturing facilities are perhaps rebuilt in countries like the UK and Canada and the States and elsewhere.
A brilliant question. So the very short answer is yes, it probably will be more expensive. So as an example, there's the idea of common land. Pre-industrial, there was land that was of benefit to everybody, and it was in everybody's interest to make sure the land was maintained and you could all graze your animals there, and that was great. And if someone misused it, then others would say, well, this isn't very good, but it would be there for everybody's benefit. You could do your own thing, but you all benefited from a common land. There's the same description used for manufacturing. They talk about industrial commons. The idea that there are skilled people in the local community, there are skilled suppliers, because it's not just you, it's can you get the suppliers there? And these are built up over time, and people move between companies, and suppliers supply to different people, and it builds up and builds up and builds up. what happened in the UK and in the United States was that a lot of those factories, the central factories, were picked up and moved to China or Mexico or wherever they were moved to, and that was a very rational thing to do because of all sorts of reasons. Didn't realise then that all those suppliers, all those skilled workers just lost their jobs and then went to other jobs. And so we lost what's called the industrial commons. Now we're trying to, again, I feel third time Trump, oh wow. Some nations are seeking to return manufacturing locally, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. That does not mean that I support Donald Trump. Is this video going to be edited? Oh, God. But exactly that point. So when you then try and build it up again, it's not just switching it on. It's, well, where are the skilled people? Where are the skilled suppliers? So you'll have to rebuild those. And initially, that will, I suspect, lead to higher costs. And we're seeing that with companies like some of the semiconductor manufacturers trying to build up capability in the United States, some of the things we're trying to do in the UK. It's really tricky, really tricky. But great question, thank you. I think there was one there, please.
You started with make as your first box.
Yes.
You haven't mentioned design.
Oh.
Because design is where all these things are captured. It's where everything starts from. You design for manufacturer.
Yes.
You design for recycling.
So, excellent point. So I decided to draw a line around my limited area of expertise. And so I have colleagues who are superbly skilled at design for manufacturing. And I thought, it'd be a bit rude if I blunder into their territory too much. But absolutely. In fact, this entire talk could be framed as an exercise in design. Because, of course, it's not just designing the product, it is designing the supply chain, well, as you say, design for manufacturing, but also design for how it's going to be sourced, and design for through-life application. So couldn't agree more, but I had to choose a starting point, and that was mine. But it's a great point. Maybe that's book 2. Thank you. Please. Oh, sorry, I think there's a microphone coming for the recording, if you don't mind. Or.
Thank you. Look, it's not directly what your talk is about, but my background's in intellectual property, so I'm curious. If you could overnight dissolve the international patent system, would you do it? You can say yes or no. I mean, yes and, you know.
I think we're out of time. Thank you very much for... No, I can't say yes or no, because I do not feel qualified to answer that question. I'm not wheezing, no, I am wheezing out of the answer because I don't feel I know enough to give a sensible answer. It would be a glib answer. But I'm very happy. So we not only have a design colleague who I defer great questions to about design, I have a colleague who specialises in intellectual property and manufacturing. I would love for you to email him with that question. Okay. That's not a rude way of doing it. But yeah, I don't think I would say anything sensible at this point. But thank you for the question. It's a great one. Maybe last 2 maybe? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. It's a very good talk. I just want to mention your point, I think you said about rethink, with 3 examples. I think during about the 80s, there was a great improvement in car engine efficiency, but then people wanted to have bigger cars, air conditioning, so all the efficiencies were offset by the consumer desire. There was a thing on BBC 4, Radio 4 recently, Mark Midanovich at UCL, did a project into disposable nappies, and found that actually what the issue was not about producing a better product that was more recyclable. What had happened was the average age at which children grew out of nappies or stopped using nappies went from something like, I think, 18 or 19 months or something like that to 31 months. And so it was a behavioural factor that shifted. Yes. And I would say now, when we all go online and search, and you get your AI search summary at the top, that's using a lot more energy. And so there's an aspect about it that consumer desire outpaces the ability of manufacturing to improve the efficiencies. So.
Excellent point. Yeah, absolutely. And it's a very tricky one. It's the energy example from AI searches is a fantastic one. So we move towards renewable energy and we go, aren't we doing well? But we're getting to this percentage of our current demand for energy, so we're all on the right track. And you go, yeah, but energy is going to go up to here. So how do we deal with this gap? We're going to have, some would say, have to go on using non-renewable sources for a while longer. Great point. Yes. I think there's one there. Yes.
Thank you. Amazing talk. So going back to the supply chain, it's so complicated and so difficult maybe to entangle. My question is like, how easy is to trace and track the parts of a product or of a, as a consumer, like how is it possible to know exactly where raw materials are? Is labor involved? And yes, and maybe even the CO2 emissions to produce those products. Will it ever be possible to put a grade or a rate on those complex products that comes from all over the world? Thank you.
Well, all these questions are great. Thank you very much. So I belief is a strange thing, but I believe that yes, we will be able, not maybe everything, but a large proportion of what we buy will be traceable and we'll be able to see that journey. Maybe not 100%, but at least an indication of it. So there's the fact that we have those fantastic levels of AI search, the fact we have a wonderful thing called not just the internet, but the Internet of Things, the fact that so many devices can have little sensors in them that provide some data, some local analysis, some signal emitting to say, this is what I am, this is where I am, means, and those are becoming so ludicrously cheap that we can, I think, move in that direction. So, cars and phones absolutely have that at the moment. We can see exactly what's going on there, and the producers can track them through life and see exactly what's going on. I think that is a harbinger of the future. But just coming back to something that I mentioned right at the beginning to someone earlier, I'm now forgetting who it was, but when I gave a similar talk to this, someone asked about palm oil. And they said, we're having a discussion about, was it, it's a product that goes into so many manufactured products, we should stop that. And we said, well, it's not quite as simple as stopping it. It's actually a very useful thing, provides lots of income for relatively poor communities in a reliable way. Then someone else in the audience said, have you seen palm oil tracker, palm oil something? I'll find it right here. We'll do a live demonstration, if I can find it. It's called palm oil scan. And the idea is you can just go to any supermarket, pick up the barcode, scan it, or just type the name of the product in, and it gives you not the full traceability. It just goes red, amber, green. And that's enough to say, well, there's a lot of uncertainties with this product. I'm not sure. Sometimes it is, we don't know. In other cases, amber and green is, no, we've done a bit of tracing here, and we can see that this is actually sourced in a very ethical way, and all these good things have happened. That we've already got. And I think we're going to see a lot more application of technology like that. Would you agree? Good. Great. I'm sensing that we are heading towards, yes, I'm getting a look from the organisers. Just finally, thank you very, very, very much for coming along. Thank you for those great questions. And if I could have the phones back, that would be much appreciated. Thank you very much.